and welcome back to the Secrets of Happily Ever After YouTube channel. This episode, while I'm recording it a little bit ahead of time, will publish on my kids' first day of school. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, back to school is exhausting. The kids are emotional. They're getting ready for a brand new year. There is so much to do, both for the kids and the parents. New sports seasons are starting, and there is so much to work out. And so I wanted to do an episode that would give you some tips and tricks to stay connected with your spouse so that you can work together as a team to get through back to school without losing your bleep, right? So we'll just dive right into my 5 tips for getting through back to school like a rock star. Tip number 1, and probably most important, is to continue to date even when you feel like you don't have time for it. Because when you feel too busy to go on date night is probably when it's vitally important for your relationship. So for me, back to school is probably the busiest time in our lives. My husband owns a seasonal business. And so when it's hot outside in the summer is when he is super, super busy. So he's working a lot of hours right now, filling in the gaps, putting out fires, and just generally being available, as well as his passion is coaching high school varsity soccer. So he's been doing this for the last 10 years. He absolutely loves it. But if he's not at work, he's on the soccer field with the boys. Their season starts now, and he keeps some really late hours doing this. And that's all in addition to my kids who play their own sports. And a lot of them have already started their early morning practices. So my day starts at like 5 in the morning. And by the time I get them to their evening practices and their activities, and I've done all the back to school errands and all the things with them, by the time my husband gets home, I am already in bed and just absolutely exhausted. So date night becomes crucially important to us. So I'll give you a little story of something that just barely happened. So this last week has been insane. The week before school, I already have an athlete who's in the thick of her volleyball season. My husband's in the thick of coaching his soccer boys, and we have really barely seen each other at all. So I am holding on to this Friday night date night and not following my own advice. I always tell you guys to plan date night in advance, but I have not even had any time to think about it. But I knew Friday night was date night. So on Friday morning, I was at the gym working out, and I got a text from my husband that said, "Do we have plans on Friday night?" So I looked at this text and I thought, is this a trick question? I know it's date night. Is he asking if I've planned it? I don't know. What is he really asking me? And then I got a second text that said, my friend just asked if I could play indoor soccer for his team tonight at 8:40. And all the sirens and alarms went off in my brain. I was like, are you kidding me? Are you even considering this? The only sliver of time that we would have to spend together, and you want to go play indoor soccer? I was fuming, and I had a couple of choices, but after taking some deep breaths and realizing that my husband was just merely he got the invitation, he was just kind of checking to see what was going on, I responded and said, hey, we don't exactly have plans, but I was really hoping that we could go out and spend some time together because it's been a really busy week. We haven't seen each other much, and I know that it's not going to get any better. So I was really excited to spend some time together. Well, he shot me a text back pretty quickly that said, you're right. Let's go ride bikes on the Greenbelt or get something to eat downtown. And then that was it. Phew, he absolutely said the right thing, did the right thing. I was so relieved. But I realized that I had several options of answering that text. I could have said, oh, sure, go play. And then I would have been resentful and irritated and probably passive aggressive for not standing up for myself and revealing that I wanted to spend time with him. Or I could have just unleashed my frustration that he would even think of such an absurd idea and not be aware that that was the only time we had to spend together, right? And thankfully, I didn't do either of those things. I took a couple of deep breaths and I responded by telling him absolutely how I felt about the situation. And thankfully, we went out on Friday night. We took a bike ride on the Greenbelt. It was some much needed time. We connected in a really great way. And now we're going into this next week totally connected and united, even though it's going to be really busy. So, my number one tip for maintaining your sanity during back to school is to make sure that nothing gets in the way of those date nights. I'm telling you, it's such a great feeling to know that your spouse is choosing you and you are choosing your spouse, even when there are other options and other invitations, things that you could be doing. It's important to show each other that you're prioritizing the relationship, that you're choosing to hang out together, even though there's other things going on. That is super, super sexy. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is very simple, and that is to budget together. So for the most part, back to school is a lot like holiday season, right? There are so many things to spend money on. There's back to school clothes, back to school supplies. There's all the different sports fees. I know for me, we have parking permits and even quick vacations that to like the last hurrah right before school starts, right? There are so many things that we can be spending money on. And if you're not expecting those expenses, it can put a huge strain on your relationship. So my advice to you is before you get into the thick of back to school shopping, that you sit down together and you make a quick budget. Like, this is how much money we're going to set aside for back to school for the kids' clothes and their shoes and backpacks and all of their supplies. And then we're going to take a little trip and we're going to use this money so there's no surprises and nobody is blindsided by the bigger expenditures that are associated with back to school. Now, you're never going to get it exactly perfect, but at least the two of you will be somewhat on the same page during this time. So, number one, date night. Number two, budgeting. My third tip for maintaining a very close connection during back to school, busy, crazy time is daily connections. Now, I'm always talking about this 20 minutes that you spend together every single day. And it's even more important the busier you are. Because if you don't take the time to spend about 20 minutes connecting with each other, what will happen is you'll get really disconnected. You'll be like missing each other during the day, and you won't have the opportunity to talk about things that are really important. Now, I'm not talking about like a budgeting meeting or what the kids have been doing or scheduling, because those are all really important meetings to have as well. But daily connections is more of a time where you can get together and talk about, what did you learn today? What was exciting to you today? Did you meet anyone or talk to anyone that was really awesome? Or what is stressing you out? What's coming up that maybe I could help ease your burden? What can I do to make your life easier? These are the types of questions you're asking each other in these 20-minute daily connections. Now, as you know, there are 1,440 minutes in the day, and you should be able to find 20 of them to connect. Now, this can be in the morning. You can take a walk after dinner. It can be after the kids get in bed. We do it all different times of the day. Maybe after the kids go to school, you have a little bit of quiet time, but 20 minutes to keep that connection strong. And I emphasize being able to support each other and show your interest in what each other's going through. My husband and I both stay very busy during this back to school time, but he's doing very different things. He's working and he's coaching, whereas I am also working, but managing the children and their schedules and their supplies and taking them to all of their activities. And so we're doing very different things. And so it's really great to be able to, for 20 minutes, just quickly connect on the things that are most important. So number 3 tip is daily connections. Make sure you're doing that. Number 4 is to set intentions. Now, this is really important in every aspect of life, but I like to think of back to school as kind of like New Year's, where you've got a clean slate, you're starting new schedules, your kids are going back to school, you're going to reorganize all of your time. And so it's nice to be able to sit down and pick one or two things, don't go crazy, but just pick a couple of things that you want to get really good at or work on or improve at, something like that. So for me, here's an example. My family is super busy in the evenings. I've got a bunch of athletes and a coach, right? And so family dinners are something that have always been really important to me, but our evenings are a mess. We've got practices and games and all different people in all different places for activities. And we're having to work carpools and have our kids pick each other up and do all kinds of things so that we can make it all work. So dinners are not super feasible. So my intention this year is to make sure that there's a lot of healthy options that the kids know about, that they can choose when they get home from school and need something to eat. And then about 9 or 10 o'clock, when my family all reconvenes after their activities, I like to have planned kind of a healthy option because everybody's hungry and they're milling around the kitchen and we're talking about our day and our experiences and things like that. So popcorn or quesadillas or some breakfast food, maybe I'll fry up some eggs or something like that, that they can quickly grab, that aren't too heavy, that they can eat late at night while we're sitting around the kitchen talking about our day. So that's my intention. It's super simple. And then my husband will choose something that he wants to work on. And then we share it with each other so that we can support and encourage and really help each other kind of meet that intention. So for me, as a words of affirmation girl, if my husband noticed that I was doing really well and having food available after school and then having a really great healthy snack in the evenings, and he said, "Love, I noticed you're doing such a great job, having these healthy options for the kids to eat," I would be like, "Yes, I've been trying so hard. Thank you for noticing," right? So number 4, set some intentions. Don't go crazy. Don't try to reinvent yourself or anything crazy like that. Just pick one or two things that you would like to improve upon. And back to school is always a great time to work on those things because you've got like a clean slate, new schedules, new routines, new ideas. So number 4, set some really great intentions for the new school year. And number 5, I actually broke it into beginner and advanced. So my beginner tip for you for making back to school more pleasurable is to come up with a few kind of code words that you and your spouse both really understand what they mean. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. When my kids were really, really young, they used to come up to us and they would stand at our feet and hold their arms up and look up at us and say, "Hold you." All 4 of my kids did that at some point. My husband and I used to think that was so cute. Well, of course, they don't say that to us anymore, but my husband and I have adopted that hold you to mean I am exhausted. It's been a hard day. I just need a hug, right? So after a long day of dealing with the kids and all the different things that we have going on, my husband walks in and I say, "Hold you." He knows exactly what that means. Do not pass go. Do not get $200. Just drop what you're doing and give me a hug. That's all I need, right? And he says the same to me. And I know exactly what it means. It's our own language. Nobody else really understands or knows what we're talking about, but we know exactly what it means. So just having a few little phrases when you're just tired at the end of the day and you know exactly what you need from your partner, and you can just say, "Hold you," and they drop everything and give you a big bear hug. So the 5th tip is to establish a language or a means of communicating your needs to each other in a very simple way that's meaningful to to both of you. Now, the advance part 2 of my 5th tip is simply to sleep naked a couple of times. Now, before you go and write me an email and go, Monica, why did you suggest that we sleep naked? That's so inappropriate. I want to assure you that you are adults, you are married, you have children together. So sleeping naked is not inappropriate, but I am giving you this suggestion based on some advice from Emily Nagoski, who is an incredible marriage researcher. And she talks about those couples who sustain long-term passion, sexual attraction over decades. And she says that these couples statistically have two things in common. One, that they are friends. So friends first. And if you're doing tips 1 through 4, then you are doing a lot to establish that friendship and trust that is required for that first thing. Okay. And then number 2, they prioritize their sexual relationship. So that means you're not always going to be thinking about sexual intimacy. But if you prioritize it, you're going to get in the bed, you're going to let your skin touch your partner's skin, and you're going to see what happens. Maybe it will lead to more, and maybe it will just be you together with your skin touching each other's skin. So that is part 2. And it is extremely important, especially during the busiest seasons of life. It just means that you prioritize each other, that you like each other, that you are friends first, and that 2, you prioritize that sexual energy between the two of you. Now, if this idea sounds absolutely abhorrent to you, then there might be something else under the surface, and it might be time for you to seek a neutral third party to maybe look into your sexual relationship. But if it sounds like something you can do, then there you have it. So those are my 5 tips for getting through back to school like an absolute rock star. I'm just going to quickly summarize them for you. Number 1, keep dating no matter how full the calendar gets. Make sure you're putting at least a 3-hour block for each other on there. Now, my husband and I have this rule where date night can slide around, but it can never be erased. So there will always be other things that get in the way, things that compete for your time, but make sure that you're getting creative and that you're prioritizing that time to spend with each other, reconnecting, making memories, and having fun together. So date night is number 1. Number 2 is budgeting. You're going to want to sit down at the beginning of back to school and write out the expenses that you're expecting to have. Now, when you do this, you can both be on the same page about the different. Now, of course, it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be things that come up, but you won't feel so stressed and strained if you're looking at a budget and you know how much money you have to spend on the different aspects of back to school. So budgeting is number 2. Number 3, daily connection. So important that you carve out daily a little bit of time to figure out how you can be a great teammate and partner. Show interest in your partner's experiences during the day. Ask how you can help them take things off their plate or make their life easier for them. Make sure that you know you're there for them, you're rooting for them, and you care about them. So daily connections is number 3. Number 4, set intentions. It always feels good to make a couple of goals and then be able to support and encourage each other. Like, be each other's biggest fans as you do everything you can to improve yourself and your situation. You're writing your own story. So make sure you are there for each other in those ways. Now, those 4 things are really, really going to solidify your friendship and the trust that you have in each other and in your relationship. Number 5 is going to take care of that second thing where you're prioritizing each other and your sexual relationship. So number 5, part A, is come up with a few kind of code words that let you express to each other what your needs are in a meaningful, understanding way. So, my example is hold you. That means I just need a bear hug, right? So, that's 5A. And 5B is to sleep naked. It feels so good. The weather is perfect for it right now. And as we head into the fall, and it's just a way of saying, I really like you. And I'm going to put myself in the bed, let my skin touch your skin, and see what happens next. So, those are your 5 tips, you guys. I would love to hear your feedback on this episode as you go through back to school. If any of those things are helpful for you, please reach out on social media or send me a text. In fact, if you want to share this episode with other parents that are in the thick of back to school, that would be so greatly appreciated. And to all of you and your children who are going back to school, best of luck. Make sure you remember to breathe, take time for each other because it's so important. And I will see you next week, same time, same place. And until then, happy marriaging. To learn more ways to deepen your intimacy and strengthen your relationship, make sure you watch this video next.